Well, g'day. Tim Harcourt, the Airport Economist. Here I am in Brazil, and I've got a very special guest with me, Greg Wallace, the Senior Trade Commission and Australian Consul General. Greg,
welcome.
Good to
welcome
see
to Brazil, Tim.
Good to be here. Good to be back.
Right.
Now, I come to Brazil a lot. Sometimes at carnival time, sometimes not. But for this visit, I'm actually here for a paper we're doing with the Low Institute and the Federal University in Rio and the University of New South Wales. Now, Greg, you've worked in Brazil before and now in your new role.
That's right.
How has it changed, from your early time here to now? It's really been come the age of Brazil, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think probably the thing that's changed the most has been what you call the internationalisation of Brazil. I mean, even 15 to 20 years ago, Brazil was still very much an inward-looking country. People didn't think about. Well, there's a lot of regulations, first of all, on control of things coming into Brazil. But secondly, people didn't think about things like studying abroad. That wasn't really in their mentality. I mean, so a couple of things have changed. People are thinking about that more, but not only that, the conditions in Brazil are much more favourable for people to do that because the middle class is growing. People have got more money. So they've got more money to do things that people in Australia, for example, have done for a long time. The country is internationalising and it's becoming more wealthy.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I was talking to some economists up in Rio, and they were telling me that at one stage in Brazil, in the 40s and the 50s, more people as a second language spoke English rather than Spanish, even though they're on the South American continent. So Brazil really is its own story, and this has been quite an interesting, transition that you've seen since you've been here.
Yeah, it has. It's certainly still its own story because Brazil, as you know, is different than other countries in Latin America. It's done things in a different way, but it's got there in its own way. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, maybe perhaps that's been largely on the back of the resource boom like Australia has been, and that's partly the story. But there's a lot more to it than that because there's been the growth of the middle class. There's been lifting 40 million people out of poverty into that middle class.
That's the size of Argentina.
Yeah, that's right. There's been a lot of other things apart from just the resource boom that have made Brazil change. Now, mind you, I think there's still a lot of things that need to change from my perspective, from a businessman's perspective, but it's certainly on the right track.
When I first came to Brazil, Greg, was 2002, 10 years ago, and I went to the World Social Forum in Porto Alegre, and I saw this guy speak who had a beard, he's a big burly metalworker, and I thought, gee, he's a good speaker, I wonder who he is. And everyone said, that's Lula. Who of course then went on to become president. And when I first came here, a lot of business people here in Sao Paulo were a bit worried about how Lula would go. It ended up being quite a success, didn't it?
Yes, it was a success, Tim. I mean, I think that he was a very successful president, but you also have to remember that the things that he did started in the presidency before him with Fernando Henrique Cardoso. He was the guy that actually implemented a lot of the changes, and the fear was that Lula was going to undo a lot of those economic reforms. And what he didn't do was he didn't undo them, and then he wanted to do more things himself. He even went further in terms of policies of redistribution of some of the wealth to the poor.
Just the Bolsa Familia?
Yeah, Bolsa Familia program was one of them. So he really did a lot more, but the policies had started before that. So the story is relatively new in Brazil, but the story is more like 15 or 20 years in the making rather than just the last 5 years.
I was intrigued by this because the first time we went to South America was to APEC in Chile, an APEC meeting, and Cardoso, the then president, spoke, and he talked about social justice, and I thought, so he's probably the left-wing candidate, and people said, no, he's the centre-left. There's someone on the left, to the left of him. And I thought, wow, so social justice seems to come through every business person in Brazil as well as social activists. Quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say that Brazil is certainly a more socialist country than Australia. I mean, I don't know that there's even a great recognition of that amongst Brazilians because that's just the way the country is. But we talked a little bit earlier about the contribution that companies make, for example, towards the provision of facilities for everyone in the city. The so-called SESCIs. I mean, companies contribute mandatorily for community centres. I mean, that's something that you wouldn't find in Australia, for example. So there's a very.
I don't think Gina Reinhardt would be signing up for that.
No, there's a very strong current of that responsibility towards the community, which is, I think, in many ways a good thing.
Someone said to me when I was in Rio last time, they said the exchange rate is so strong now that even my maid can go to Buenos Aires and do shopping for a holiday. I mean, there seems to be some social mobility in Brazil now because of the economic growth and some of these changes.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, to give you an example, growth in airlines is about 20% year on year. Airline passengers.
It's good for an
huge
airport
growth.
economist.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it's good.
And those maids that are now going to Argentina can also go back to where their home towns are, which is still quite often in the northeast of Brazil. A lot of them have migrated there in years gone by. They return, but now instead of going on the bus, they'll fly.
And there's a bit of a two-speed economy, you see, with the northeast is poorer. But again, that's where a lot of population is, and they migrate for work, don't they?
Yeah, the northeast is certainly poor, and the north for that matter. The wealth is overwhelmingly concentrated in the southeast and the south of Brazil. But if you look at growth indicators, in fact, within Brazil, the northeast region is growing faster than the south and the southeast. So that the convergence of that is slowly happening. I mean, it'll take a long time before those regions reach the wealth that you see here, but it's on the right path for that to happen eventually.
Now, from an Australian point of view, I suppose you've got a growing middle class, growing consumer class here. Must be good news for Westfield. Must be good news for Australian universities wanting to provide education. Must be good news for people providing infrastructure from Australia.
Yeah, that's right, Tim. I think that in the past the relationship has been fairly shallow from the point of view that we've only looked at some of the big things that Brazil does and what we do and how we can fit into that. But what you see now with the growth of the middle class here is that Brazil, in a sense, is like a small China or a small India, and not so small, but smaller than them, of course. In that anything that Australia does in services or infrastructure, all the sectors are going to be applicable here in Brazil, because it's not just that we can do things in mining, and it's not just that we can do things in educational. That's a very important indicator. Almost anything that is an indicator of consumption and growth of middle class is going to represent an opportunity for Australian companies.
Yeah, so the Westfields, the universities, all the service companies are going to find Brazil pretty good place.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, we're all very excited, of course. We've got the World Cup and the Rio Olympics, in 4 years' time.
That's right.
Now,
wish I was here for them.
Well, I was going to say maybe that can be arranged, but Sydney did the Olympics very well, and had we got the World Cup, we would have done that well as well. How's Brazil going to go? I mean, some of the people I'm interviewing here in Brazil are sort of saying we're very excited, but we've got to get the stadiums ready. I mean, you're confident they can deliver because the world will be watching Brazil.
Yeah, I'm confident that Brazil will deliver a good World Cup in the Olympics. I mean, I think that some of the things that were talked about in terms of these being transformational events for Brazil are pretty aspirational, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of talk a few years ago about these events will transform Brazil. I actually think that the things that are transforming Brazil are happening anyway, and will continue to happen. Those things we talked about before. I think you more want to look at those events as sort of standalone events that Brazil will deliver, and they'll have some problems, but they've got some unique ways of solving problems here, and I'm pretty sure that they will deliver the events.
Now, the next time I interview you, you'll probably be in Bangkok, so congratulations on your posting.
Thanks, Tim.
That'll be exciting for you in the region. Now, can you tell me, you've had a great time here, can you tell me like your favourite moment during, you've got a wonderful team here in Sao Paulo that we're very grateful as Australians to have. Can you tell me, the things you're most proud of in your team here?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things, Tim. I mean, I think that the part of the let's say the recognition of the importance of Brazil, it doesn't happen just by chance. It happens because my staff and our team here is engaged with Australian business in elevating these opportunities and making things happen. So I wouldn't pick on one specific thing, but a lot of the events, a lot of the activities we've done with companies over the years, they get recognition in Australia. People see what we're doing. They start to take notice, and so the thing I feel most proud about in a general sense is that I made some contribution towards raising that profile. There's a long way to go. I mean, I think there's a lot of role still for government to do. I mean, there hasn't been enough engagement, I don't think, yet by government in Brazil.
Kevin didn't get it, did he?
No, the Foreign Minister's here, Mr. Ruggles here, not as Prime Minister, he was here as a Foreign Minister.
Yeah, that picture of Craig Foster, didn't he, with Pele's
That's right.
Guernsey.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good.
So, yeah, it's been about building their relationship, I mean, and in the end, and things like students, more students going to Australia, more than coming back and talking about Australia as a destination, it encourages the business. So, we're on the right track. We're never going to be Southeast Asia or China or India to Australia.
No.
But I think that there's a role for Brazil to be a bigger player within Australian minds than what it is now.
I found at the universities, particularly in the MBA programs, Brazilians are great students because they talk up, they're well educated, they've got a good intellectual basis, but they're also good at business problem solving. That's something that will probably help broaden the ties and strengthen them.
Yeah, very practical. Brazilians are very practical in the way they approach things. There's an expression here, they call it the jeitinho, which is sometimes a little bit derogatory. It means there's a little way to find a way around things that can't be done. So you put a roadblock in front of a Brazilian, they'll find a way around it. It's a pretty interesting characteristic they have.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, when we do the Book of the Law Institute, we'll have to invite you back here for the launch, whether you're in Bangkok
That'd be great.
or back in
Can you make it around the World Cup?
Well, we'll do it. Well, we might time it well. But thanks for your time here, and can I thank Anna Carolina and all the team here in Sao Paulo. We really are well served by the Brazilian staff here in Australia.
Great, thanks Tim. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you.